Somewhere in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz, a U.S. Navy minesweeper is dragging specialized equipment through water that has held mines for months. The exact location is classified. The precise number of mines already cleared is classified. The methodology, whether it is Avenger-class ships with their sonar systems, MH-53E Sea Dragon helicopters towing mine-hunting arrays, remotely operated underwater vehicles examining the seabed, or Navy explosive ordnance disposal divers working in protected areas, is not being detailed in any CENTCOM press release. What has been stated, publicly and on the record, by the President of the United States on August 11, 2026, is the conclusion. The U.S. has swept the Strait of Hormuz for mines, and the U.S. Navy has full control of the waterway. The most important and least visible operation of the entire war has been happening below the surface of the most important body of water on Earth. And the announcement that it has succeeded is, in military terms, potentially more consequential than any of the hundreds of airstrikes that have generated news coverage since February 28th. You can rebuild a command post. You can replace a radar system. You cannot simply undo the strategic effect of a cleared minefield, because the mines that have been swept are gone, and the institution that laid them, the IRGC Navy, has had most of its mine-laying vessels destroyed by American airstrikes. Iran's mine warfare capability in the Strait of Hormuz is not a recent improvisation. It is a doctrine and a capability that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has been developing, refining, and specifically optimizing for this geography since the 1980s. The Iran-Iraq War's tanker war phase, running roughly from 1984 to 1988, was the crucible in which the IRGC Navy learned what mines could accomplish in the narrow waters of the Persian Gulf. During that conflict, Iran sowed mines in shipping lanes and approached channels with an effectiveness that Western naval planners had not fully anticipated, hitting commercial vessels and, most consequentially, American warships. On April 14, 1988, the American frigate USS Samuel B. Roberts struck an Iranian mine in the central Persian Gulf while returning from escorting a Kuwaiti tanker. The explosion blew a hole approximately 5 meters wide in the ship's hull, flooded 3 compartments, buckled the keel, and nearly sank the vessel. 10 sailors were injured, some seriously. The Roberts was saved by damage control work that the crew subsequently credited with being the best in the Navy's history. The ship was eventually repaired, but the mine that nearly sank it became a central reference point in American naval planning for the Persian Gulf for the next 38 years. The response to the Roberts mining was Operation Praying Mantis on April 18, 1988, the largest American surface naval engagement since World War II. In a single day, the U.S. Navy sank the Iranian frigate Sahand, severely damaged the frigate Sabalan, destroyed 2 Iranian oil platforms being used as military command posts, and sank several smaller Iranian vessels. The operation was tactically decisive. It was also strategically limited, because it did not eliminate Iran's mine inventory or its willingness to use mines in future conflicts. What Praying Mantis established was the American Navy's ability to defeat the IRGC Navy in open surface combat. What it did not establish was a cleared Strait of Hormuz. The mines already in the water when Praying Mantis was conducted remained in the water after it. The lesson Iran drew was not that mines were a failed strategy. The lesson was that mines needed to be improved, diversified, and deployed in greater numbers from a larger number of platforms to make clearing them a longer and more difficult process than any adversary would want to undertake. The IRGC spent the next 38 years doing exactly that. The IRGC Navy's mine inventory in 2026 includes the Standoff series of Iranian-produced contact mines, shaped charge mines designed to penetrate ship hulls, rather than simply exploding against them. It includes the EM-52 rocket-propelled mine, Iran's most sophisticated system, which sits on the seabed and launches upward toward a ship's keel when its acoustic, magnetic, or pressure sensors detect a vessel passing overhead. It includes MDM-6 deep-water mines acquired from the Soviet Union and Russia over decades of arms transfers, and older Chinese-supplied mines from the C-08 series that the IRGC has been modifying and improving domestically. The total inventory, by Western intelligence estimates compiled before the war began, runs into the thousands of individual mines, held across storage facilities along the Iranian coast and on the mine-laying vessels that the IRGC operates. 16 of those mine-laying vessels were destroyed by American airstrikes on the night of July 13th, in a single operation that CENTCOM documented and published video of. Those 16 vessels are no longer laying mines. The mines they had already laid before July 13th remained in the water. The strategic geography of the Strait of Hormuz makes its minefield both more difficult to sweep and more important to sweep than any comparable body of water. The strait is 19 nautical miles wide at its narrowest, but the navigable deepwater channels are significantly more constrained. Laden supertankers drawing 30 meters of water cannot transit the shallow areas near the Iranian and Omani coasts and must stay within the traffic separation scheme's designated lanes. lanes whose precise coordinates are publicly available and well known to Iranian mine warfare planners. A mine laid in the inbound lane of the Hormuz traffic separation scheme does not need to hit a specific vessel. It simply needs to be in the lane where vessels will pass. The EM-52's rocket propulsion system means it does not need to be at a specific depth relative to the keel of the ship it targets. It can sit on the bottom in water that would otherwise be too deep for a moored contact mine and still reach upward to strike a passing vessel. The geometry of the traffic separation scheme and the capabilities of the EM-52 together mean that a relatively small number of well-placed mines can create a corridor that is functionally impassable until the mines are found and removed. Clearing that corridor requires what the U.S. Navy calls mine countermeasures, an entire specialized branch of naval warfare that most Americans have never heard of precisely because it is conducted underwater, slowly, with vessels that look nothing like the carriers and destroyers that dominate the Navy's public image. The Avenger-class mine countermeasures ship is a 520-ton wooden-hulled vessel built specifically to minimize its magnetic signature so it does not trigger the influence mines it is hunting. It moves at extremely low speeds through the target area, using hull-mounted sonar and a remotely operated mine neutralization system to locate and deal with mines it finds. The MH-53E Sea Dragon helicopter can tow a series of mine-sweeping systems, including the AQS-24 mine-hunting sonar, the ANAES-1 airborne laser mine detection system, and the MK-105 magnetic mine-sweeping sled, which generates a magnetic field designed to trigger magnetic influence mines at a safe distance from the helicopter and its crew. The AN-SLQ-48 mine neutralization system, deployed from Avenger-class ships, is an underwater vehicle that can identify a mine, attach a neutralizing charge, and back away before detonating it. Each of these systems requires slow, methodical passes through the target area. None of them can clear a minefield quickly, which is why the announcement that the Hormuz minefield has been swept represents weeks of work rather than days. The operational challenge of conducting mine countermeasures in the Strait of Hormuz throughout this war has been that the sweep vessels and helicopters themselves are slow, large, and difficult to protect when operating in water dominated by Iranian shore-based anti-ship missiles, armed drones, and fast attack boats. The July the 13th strikes that destroyed 16 Iranian mine layers simultaneously degraded the shore-based coastal defense infrastructure around the strait, targeting coastal radar systems, command posts, and anti-ship missile batteries at Jask, Konarak, Abu Musa, and Bandar Abbas. The 7 consecutive nights of strikes from July 11th through July 18th continued that suppression campaign, specifically targeting air defense systems and military logistics infrastructure that would allow Iran to threaten the slower mine countermeasures vessels. The progressive degradation of Iranian coastal defense capability, documented across the 7-night strike campaign and its predecessors, is what created the conditions under which mine sweeping became operationally feasible rather than suicidal. You cannot send a slow, wooden-hulled mine countermeasures ship into a channel dominated by Iranian shore-launched anti-ship missiles without first destroying enough of those missiles and their launch infrastructure to give the minesweeper a reasonable chance of completing its mission. The air campaign and the mine-sweeping campaign are one integrated operation, and Trump's August 11th announcement is the public declaration that the integrated operation has achieved its objective. The Iranian response to the mine sweep announcement reveals the specific vulnerability it creates for Tehran's remaining strategic posture. The IRGC's mine warfare doctrine in the Strait has been its most asymmetric and most cost-effective tool for threatening commercial shipping at scale. A mine costs between a few thousand and a few tens of thousands of dollars to produce, depending on the sophistication of its fusing system. A ship it damages costs hundreds of millions. A shipping industry forced to route around a mined strait costs the global economy billions per month. The disproportionate leverage that mines provide, enormous economic disruption at relatively low cost, is why the IRGC has invested so heavily in mine production and storage over decades, and why the mine-laying operations since February 28 have been such a central part of its strategy for pressuring the U.S. Navy and the commercial shipping industry simultaneously. Losing that minefield, having it swept by American mine countermeasures, forces operating under the protection of the same air campaign that destroyed the mine layers, removes from the IRGC's available toolkit the one option that did not require it to put its fast attack boats, its aircraft, or its shore-launched missiles in direct confrontation with a U.S. Navy that has been systematically dismantling all of those capabilities since February 28th. Mines were the IRGC's passive denial system, the capability that worked even when IRGC personnel were being killed by airstrikes elsewhere. Swept mines are no longer a capability at all. Iran's remaining options for contesting American naval presence in the Strait after the mine sweep fall into 3 categories, each of which has been significantly degraded by 5.5 months of American airstrikes. Shore-launched anti-ship missiles, including the Noor and Khalij Fars variants, remain the most capable residual threat. But the coastal radar and command infrastructure that cues those missiles onto targets has been repeatedly struck across multiple rounds of attacks, reducing the accuracy and responsiveness of the system, even if the missiles themselves survive in underground storage. Fast attack boats, the IRGC Navy's signature tool for swarming larger vessels, have been targeted in multiple CENTCOM strike packages, with more than 60 boats destroyed in a single night during this July 7th operation, and additional losses in subsequent strikes. The 55 fast attack craft documented in swarms on July 29th represent whatever has survived and been reconstituted from that attrition, a number that is operationally significant but substantially smaller than what the IRGC began the war with. Underwater capabilities, including midget submarines and swimmer delivery vehicles, are the least publicly documented and therefore the most uncertain element of the residual threat picture. What can be said with confidence is that the combination of swept mines, destroyed mine layers, degraded coastal radar, and reduced fast attack boat inventory represents a fundamentally different threat environment in the Strait of Hormuz on August 12, 2026, than existed on February 28th. The diplomatic timing of Trump's mine sweep announcement is not coincidental. The Reuters report on August 8th described negotiations between Iran and Oman as progressing toward a deal expected soon, with a U.S. official stating that the blockade would be lifted once an agreement was reached to restore commercial shipping without impediments. The minesweep announcement on August 11th, coming 3 days after that optimistic diplomatic report, establishes an important negotiating reality. The physical changes in the strait that Iran's PGSA claimed justified its authority to issue transit permits have been partially reversed by American action. The mines that the PGSA was using as one justification for its control of the waterway have been swept. The mine layers that could replace them have been destroyed. The shore-based defenses that covered the mining operations have been degraded. If the Oman talks produce a deal, it will be a deal that formalizes American naval control of a strait where the mine threat has been eliminated, where Iran's mine-laying capacity has been severely reduced, and where the legal framework of the PGSA's permit authority is being directly contested by a naval presence that the American president says constitutes full control of the waterway. For commercial shipping, the practical significance of a cleared Hormuz is immense, but not yet fully realized. The 14 to 20 commodity vessels transiting per day in late July represent an improvement from single-digit levels during the height of the strike campaign, but remain a fraction of the 130-plus daily transits that characterized normal peacetime operations before February 28th. The mine threat has been one of multiple factors depressing transit numbers, alongside the persistent IRGC fast attack boat presence, the Houthi Red Sea operations making the alternative route also hazardous, and the PGSA's formal refusal to issue transit permits for non-compliant vessels. Removing the mine threat does not remove the other factors, but it changes the risk calculus for shipping operators, who have been paying war risk insurance premiums $250,000 above normal per voyage precisely because the mine threat was real, documented, and unpredictable. Predictable risk can be priced. Random mines on the seabed of the world's most important shipping lane cannot. A cleared strait is a safer strait, even if it is not yet a fully open one. The USS Samuel B. Roberts nearly sank in 1988 because of an Iranian mine in a war that has since been largely forgotten by the American public. 38 years later, the country that nearly sank an American frigate with a mine laid in the Persian Gulf has had the mines it laid in the Strait of Hormuz, swept by the same Navy that the Roberts sailed with. The mine layers that would have replaced those mines are at the bottom of the Gulf. The coastal radar systems that covered the mining operations have been struck across 3 months of air campaigns. The command posts that coordinated the mine-laying vessels have been destroyed. Trump said the U.S. Navy has full control of the Strait of Hormuz. The mine sweep that preceded that statement is the most concrete operational foundation for the claim. Iran still has missiles, still has some fast attack boats, still has the formal position of the PGSA, asserting its authority over transit permits, but it does not have its minefield. The passive denial system that cost a few $1,000s per unit and threatened billion-dollar vessels is gone. What the IRGC does next, with the tools it still has, and the command structure that Mojtaba Khamenei just formalized around Vahidi, and the mandate for powerful offensive operations, is the question the cleared strait is now waiting to answer. The tactical dimension of mines sweeping in the Strait of Hormuz in 2026 differs from any previous American mine clearance operation in one specific and important way. The operation is being conducted in waters where the threat to the sweeping vessels themselves is simultaneously being suppressed by an air campaign against the shore-based infrastructure that would threaten them. During the 1988 tanker war mine-sweeping operations, American helicopter crews flying the RH-53D Sea Stallion and later MH-53E Sea Dragon over the Persian Gulf operated under continuous threat from Iranian shore-based defenses that had not been systematically degraded beforehand. The minesweep happened in a contested environment. The 2026 minesweep, to the extent that Trump's announcement reflects operational reality, is happening in an environment where 7 consecutive nights of airstrikes, multiple rounds of coastal radar and command post destruction, and sustained degradation of IRGC fast attack boat capability have reduced the threat to the sweep vessels significantly from what it would have been in February. The sequence, degrade the coast, then sweep the water, is the integrated campaign the airstrikes were designed to enable. What Trump's announcement that the U.S. Navy has full control of the waterway does not answer, and what no public source can answer with confidence, is what percentage of Iran's total mine inventory has been swept. Iran's mines were not all laid at once, and not all concentrated in a single location. The EM-52 rocket mines on the seabed, the moored contact mines in the channels, the influence mines triggered by acoustic and magnetic signatures, each type requires different detection and neutralization methods, and each may be present in different proportions in different sections of the strait. A minesweep that clears the primary traffic separation scheme, inbound and outbound lanes, does not necessarily clear the approach channels from the Gulf of Oman, the alternative transit routes, or the shallower areas near the Iranian coast, where fast attack boats operate. Full control, as a phrase, covers whatever has been done. Whether what has been done is comprehensive enough to allow normal commercial transit rates to recover, or whether it addresses the primary shipping lanes while residual mine threats remain in secondary passages, is something that commercial shipping operators, their insurers, and their routing advisors will be assessing from the outside based on whether the vessels that transit in the coming days do so without incident. The minesweep is announced. The proof of its completeness is in the next 30 days of transit data,